to deceive the people for the purpose of exploiting them, to enslave them and delay their progress or prevent it if possible. Such is the crime of black magic. This quote was written in 1861. Does it sound familiar? It should, because it's exactly what's happening today. Deceive the people for the purpose of exploiting them. Check. Enslave them. Check. Delay or prevent their progress. Double check. In less than 100 years, we've gone from this to this. We sit here like mindless zombies staring at a screen for hours at a time. And this is just the beginning. There is a global syndicate of underground black magicians who have been steering the course of history from behind the scenes since the beginning of time. Quote, "But what skeptics and agnostic Christians alike ignore is that besides the drawing room mediums for diversion, there are occultists whose vile practices are veiled in the most profound mystery. These men, whose moral sense is absolutely perverted, believed in Lucifer, but believe him to be equal of God and worship him secretly." End quote. In order to avoid falling victim to these spells, we must be able to identify them quickly and accurately. Every time you turn on the TV, they're casting a spell. Modern-day witches and occultists cast spells through a variety of methods, most of which are hidden in plain sight for all to see, yet they go completely ignored by the general public. One of the most common forms of black magic we are subject to is called lesser magic. Lesser magic, in its most basic form, is the implementation of the magician's will through the use of applied psychology and manipulation tactics.
The thing is, you speak for a consensus of reality which is acceptable. We speak for one which at this point in history is not acceptable. So it's just a question of who manipulates the media, who has the most money to put their reality forth.
A 49-year-old unidentified man went berserk last night.
Where does she get her view of the world?
Shotgun. 14 people are dead, including 3
Who will be her
children.
role models?
Never been a better time to buy.
What values will she have? Whose child is she? Yours or the network's? Take back your children. Turn off the TV.
Predictive programming, subliminal messages, and subliminal manipulation are all widely used today and can be found in just about every form of entertainment.
Right now on Fox 5 News at 10.
Back we are now with a Fox 5 News exclusive.
A message of hate found in a...
Major U.S. Daily story about subliminal messages. I don't think we need to be subliminal.
Have you ever been fascinated by something? A movie, a TV show, a music video, a painting, or a song? If you answered yes, there is a high likelihood that you have fallen victim to lesser magic. Quote, "The word fascination has an occult origin. Fascination was a term applied to the evil eye. To fix a person's gaze, in other words, fascinate, was to curse them with the evil eye." End quote. Now, there are two main schools in modern occultism: practical Kabbalah and Eastern mysticism. With many offshoots, most of them will fall under these two categories. The Kabbalah can be seen as the actual science of the occult. It is the secret theology that boils down to a few basic principles, and they are all satanic in nature. You see, Kabbalists believe that our God, Yahweh, the God of Israel, and Jesus Christ himself are the embodiment of evil, while worshiping Lucifer as the true God of creation. It's the exact same upside-down theology that was presented to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. The Kabbalah teaches magic, or the art of intercourse with spirits and supernatural beings. One cannot be a convinced Kabbalist without soon becoming a magician and devoting oneself to the practice of occultism. Not that all Kabbalists or magicians practice all the different branches of occultism. Some of them are used by charlatans for the exploitation of a superstitious person, but a great many, precisely the most criminal and perverse, are observed in the hidden dens of modern Luciferians." End quote. Ritual magic has two major disciplines. Now keep in mind that all of these methods are considered an abomination to God and should be avoided at all costs. First is divining magic. Divining magic consists of the following: astrology, which is divining the future from the stars through the use of horoscopes; aeromancy, which is divination by the study of aerial phenomena, specifically cloud formations; palmistry, divining the future from reading the lines on one's palm; hydromancy, divination by studying liquids and how they are affected by thoughts and words; anthropomancy, which is a, quote, horrible, savage abomination and consists of disemboweling a human being, then spreading out the entrails for the purpose of divining the future. Druids in ancient Britain were said to consult their gods by looking into the entrail of their captives. End quote. Pyromancy, divination by fire; onirocritics, which is divining the future through dream interpretations; and finally we have cartomancy, which is divination by cards. Now we move on to operative magic. Luciferians worldwide have been using these methods since the beginning of time. These rites are easy to identify as they all share the same basic principles. The first on our list of operative magic is alchemy. Originally called Hermetic science, named after the god Hermes, alchemy uses spiritual power to physically change or transmutate one thing into another. Historically, it was used to create elixirs and potions that were supposed to, quote, increase a person's life. Next up, we have mesmerism. Magnetic mesmerism is the black magic equivalent of MK Ultra. Using sorcery, one is able to gain control of a person's mind, implanting whatever thoughts and ideas they deem necessary. The aim is a fractured personality which can be turned on and off at will, essentially creating a golem which does the deed of the magician. This is found in the majority of SRA victims. Next we have necromancy and theurgy. Necromancy is the practice of evoking the spirits of the dead, and theurgy is the supernatural assistance in the life of a living person. Quote, "The experience of theurgy and necromancy are always disastrous to those who indulge in them. When one has stood on the threshold of the other world, one must die, and almost invariably under terrible conditions. First, giddiness, then catalepsy, followed by madness. It is true that the atmosphere is disturbed, the woodwork cracks, and the doors tremble and groan in the presence of a certain persons after a series of intoxicating acts. Weird sounds, sometimes bloody signs, will appear spontaneously on paper or linen. They are always the same and are classed by magicians as diabolical writings. The very sight of them induces a state of convulsion or ecstasy in the medium who believes themselves to be seeing spirits. Thus, Satan, the spirit of evil, is transfigured for them into an angel of light. But before they will manifest, these so-called spirits require sympathetic excitement produced by sexual intercourse on the part of their devotees. Hands must be placed in hands, feet on feet. They must breathe in each other's faces. These acts often are followed by others of an obscene character. The initiates, reveling in these forms of excess, believe themselves to be the elect of God and the arbiters of destiny. They are the successors of the fakirs of India. No warning will save them. Theurgy is the highest degree of occultism. Necromancy is limited to the summoning of dead souls, but the Theurgists of the 19th century evoked the entities qualified by them as genii, angels of light, exalted spirits, spirits of fire, etc. In their meetings, scattered throughout the world, they worship Lucifer. The three mysterious letters J, B, M that the common initiate sees in Masonic temples are reproduced in meeting rooms of the Luciferians, but they no longer mean Jachin, Boaz, Mahabone, as in the lodges. In Theurgy, these three letters mean Jesus, Bethlehemitus, Elicticus. Theurgy is therefore pure Satanism, end quote. Moreover, it is important to note that Kabbalists admitted to the mysteries of Theurgy never mention the word Satan. They look upon certain dissident adepts who invoke the devil under the name of Satan as heretics, whose system they call Goeity or black magic. They call their own practices Theurgy or white magic, end quote. They go by many names and claim separation from each other based on fundamental differences. However, they're all initiates of ancient Babylonian mystery schools, practitioners of the kindred rites. They deliberately glorify Lucifer as the principle of good, while believing our God, Yahweh, as the principle of evil. This ideology can be found in many different belief systems, and it exposes them for who they really are. According to author Margaret Alice Murray, quote, "The deity worshipped by the witches was in some cases Lucifer, as opposition to the Christian God. Devotees were obliged formally to renounce Christ, the Holy Ghost, and the Christian God before embracing the double faith, which was the logical outgrowth of the dualist doctrine of double divinity. This makes it clear. The god of the witches is Lucifer, who is represented either as the double-faced god Janus or a slightly modified version of the Baphomet with a lit candle between its horns, symbolizing the rising Kundalini serpent and activation of the pineal gland. In 1484, Pope Innocent issued a papal bull concerning witchcraft. Quote, "It has come to our ears that numbers of both sexes do not avoid to have intercourse with demons, incubi, and succubi, and that, by their sorceries and by their incantations, charms, conjurations, they suffocate, extinguish, and cause to perish the births of women." End quote. Perish the births of women. Sound familiar? Child sacrifice is one of the key elements used in all schools of Luciferian magic. It is the main source of power for these people and continues right up into the present day. Quote, "The child victim was usually a young infant, usually a witch's child or unbaptized, in other words, not part of the Christian community. This last is an important point, and is the reason why unbaptized children were considered to be in greater danger from witches than baptized, end quote. The subject of child sacrifice is far too extensive for this short video, and it will require its own in-depth investigation, so for now, let's move on. One of the most important aspects of all magic is the acquisition of supernatural power and the ability to influence the natural world through these powers. One of the main ways they do this is by calling upon the spirits for assistance. We know them as unclean spirits, but they're referred to as elemental spirits by the occultists. Elementals, or, quote, dwellers on the threshold, are spirit beings who require blood to manifest their ethereal body, which is formed by the very vapor of the blood itself. This is the reason why blood sacrifices were often burned to vaporize the blood, allowing it to be absorbed by the elemental spirit. Quote, they are the incubi and succubi, the monstrous children of impure dreams. When sufficiently condensed to be visible, they are only a vapor, colored by the reflection of a picture and having no independent life. They imitate the life of him who evokes them. As the shadow does the body. These elementals draw the vital heat from a person's in good health and quickly exhaust those who are weak. That is why one feels a chill of the atmosphere when approaching a medium who are persons possessed by these spirits that will never manifest in the presence of anyone able to unveil the mystery of their monstrous birth, end quote. Now that we've exposed their methods, let's take a quick look at their rise to political power. The year was tried for treason. During the trial, it was exposed that the Grand Master Witch, Frances Stuart, who was the Earl of Bothwell, attempted to remove King James of Scotland with the use of ritual magic. When he failed, his coven and himself were arrested, tried, and hanged. Lady Queensborough writes, quote, studying the history of the Mopses in 1761, we find its members adorned with the distinctive garter of the witch, performing the ceremonial kissing of the devil's tail as part of the ritual of 18th century masonry. The coven of the Middle Ages is the Masonic Lodge of today, but the craft remains the craft, end quote. Now that we know some of the methods used by the other side, not only can we avoid them, but we can use them as indicators of their presence throughout history. And piece together a timeline of events that not only reveals their presence, but exposes the very fact that they've been here all along, plotting, planning, and waiting for that perfect moment. Thank you all for watching.